Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We will get started shortly.
Bienvenidos a todos. En breve se dará inicio a la sesión. Gracias.
Right. So it is a little bit after the start time. I think that we will go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this information session on the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub Policy Project. This meeting offers live interpretation in English and Spanish. To access it, click the globe icon labeled Interpretation at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Select your preferred language, English or Spanish. You can also choose to mute the original audio if you'd like to hear only the interpretation.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la sesión de esta velada. Va a haber interpretación en simultáneo, inglés-español, español-inglés. Si desean escuchar a sus intérpretes en vivo durante toda la velada, por favor, asegúrense de que una vez que se haya iniciado la interpretación, elijan su canal de preferencia, en este caso de español, yendo al icono con forma de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla y luego eligiendo español. Y también pueden elegir silenciar el audio original solamente con la finalidad de escuchar a sus intérpretes. Muchísimas gracias, que lo disfruten. Thank you. We're ready to go our channels.
Fantastic. All right, wonderful. The purpose of today's session is to share more details about the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub Policy Project and to answer your questions to help inform your feedback. I'm Wayne Grabowski. I support engagement at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability and will be your moderator for today's session. Please note this session is being recorded and will be posted publicly. Staff will present an overview of the project and the alternative proposals. This is not a formal public comment session. While we won't be collecting official comments here, we will make sure that you have access to the formal comment process. We do ask that you hold questions until after the presentation. If you need clarification on any points, please note those down and we can return to the slide and the topic during the Q&A. Tonight's session will go until 7 p.m. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Ryan. Ryan?
Thanks, Wayne. I'm going to share my presentation here. Okay. Looks like it's in presentation mode. On my end, Joan, can you? Yeah, you got it.
Great.
Okay, great.
Looks good.
All right. Good evening. I'm Ryan Singer. I'm the principal planner for long-range planning and urban design at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And today I'm going to be presenting on the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub Policy Project. We have a QR code. It's here, and we'll have it again at the end so that you can link to that, and that will give you provide more information. The website there will provide more information on the project and also links to provide comment on the discussion draft. So today I'll be presenting on the discussion draft of the policy project. Project, the background and scope of the project. We'll also discuss a little bit about what we've heard in our outreach to this point. And then we'll do an overview of the alternatives that are in the discussion draft, along with some of the policies that would support those alternatives. And then I will describe the next steps in the process, and then we can have a question and answer period. So here's the project timeline. The project was launched in May of 2025. We've had multiple opportunities for public feedback to this point, and then also after. So we have the discussion draft, which we're at that stage now. And there will, as I said earlier, there's a place for us to collect public comment on that discussion draft. And then later in the year, in October or November, we will have, actually more November, we will have a proposed draft, and that will go to the Planning Commission, where the commission will collect testimony and hear and hold a hearing as well. And then from there, the commission will vote on a recommended draft, and that recommended draft will go to the city council, which will again collect testimony, hold a hearing, and then vote on the proposal. We anticipate an adoption of this sometime in early of 2026, in March 2026. So a little background on the Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub, the CEI Hub, as we call it. It's located in Northwest Portland, between the Willamette River and Forest Park. And it is roughly, the northern boundary is roughly Northwest 113th in the north and Northwest Kittredge Avenue in the south. There are 11 bulk fuel terminals in this area with 630 tanks and about 350 million gallons of storage of bulk liquid fuels. The location is served by rail. It has marine access and is the southern terminus of the Olympic Pipeline, which pipes fuel down from the refineries in Washington State. It is also an access point, the access point for a pipeline that goes to Eugene. The CEI Hub serves the state of Oregon with 90% of the fuel used in the state passing through the hub. The fuel comes in and out via the pipeline, which I just described, that goes to Washington State, from Washington State, and then also by barge, train, and truck. Much of the fuel is used in the Willamette Valley. Those estimates are based on the population. So while it is an important piece of infrastructure for the city and for the state, the CEI Hub is located on land that has a high risk of liquefaction in a seismic event. This could lead to spills, wildfires, and toxic air quality. There are other risks with this location, including landslides. So those are some of our concerns. Those concerns have led us to this policy project, which has three components. First, it is to update the comprehensive plan policies that guide development at the hub and support safety upgrades. Out of these policy changes, the project will explore options to further regulate the terminal. So we have the sort of basis of the policies, and then we write regulations to implement those policies. And those are done through the zoning code or other regulatory tools. And finally, BPS is using this project as a platform to convene state and local agencies that regulate the activities at the CEI Hub to coordinate the emergency management efforts. During the course of the outreach that we've been doing since May for this project, we've heard from the community about giving priority to health and safety, the need for a holistic approach, specifically around emergency management, and also persistently the idea of relocating the hub. There's a strong desire to reduce the risk from the existing tanks, reduce the fuel storage capacity at the hub, and require seismic safety improvements. The community has also expressed a desire to regulate more types of hazardous materials and also the smaller facilities that do store bulk or store fuel. And finally, there's been a discussion of the just transition from fossil fuels and a future vision for the area without the terminals. And those are outside the scope of this this project, but they have been discussed by the community. We have also heard from the industry operating in the hub and from labor groups. Industry has expressed an interest in the economic impact analysis for any proposed changes to the regulations. They have expressed a need for flexibility given the uncertainty around the energy transition. And they've specifically cited a need for additional capacity for renewable fuels and sustainable aviation fuel. So SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. The industry has expressed a desire to ensure that city efforts are coordinated and consistent with the State Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ seismic mitigation work. So the state is doing some work to ensure seismic stability in the CEI Hub. They have also offered information that they have about the relative safety of the terminals and consistent with the information that they've provided to the DEQ. Labor groups have expressed a need for flexibility to support the transition to renewables and sustainable aviation fuel, and also for seismic upgrades. So that's what we've heard in our outreach to date. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the regulatory alternatives that we are that are in the discussion draft. But first, I'll describe the baseline that is currently today in terms of the regulatory framework. So the baseline prohibits new bulk fossil fuel terminals, and bulk fossil fuel terminals are defined as those terminals with a capacity over 2 million gallons. It limits bulk fossil fuel terminals to their 2022 fossil fuel store capacity levels. It allows expansion for aviation fuels and renewable fuels, as those were at the time of these regulations, those were seen as fuel types that were growing or that we as a city wanted to support the transition to. And it allows for repair and replacement of existing tanks. And you see the graphic here at the bottom sort of describes those provisions in graphic form. So the green little tank or line, squiggly line to the truck there is the transloading infrastructure. Those are allowed to expand. And then the red tank is prohibited expansion for fossil fuels, but the green tanks indicate that it is the expansion is allowed for renewable and aviation fuels. And we have 4 alternatives in the discussion draft. The first alternative, each of them are sort of progressively more restrictive. So the first alternative really builds upon the baseline and limits fossil fuel transloading facilities. The alternative 2 further limits expansion, and then except in case of seismic upgrades. So it limits the expansion of all types of fuel types except for cases of seismic upgrades. Alternative 3 prohibits all expansions, but it would retain the ability for repairs and replacement of existing tanks. And then alternative 4 would prohibit all expansions and reduce and have a reduced capacity in the future. So to discuss the alternatives in a little more detail, so limiting fossil fuel transloading, this would alternative 1 would maintain the baseline regulations on fossil fuels. You can see that in the graphic there with the red tank still prohibited expansion. It would prohibit new fossil fuel transloading infrastructure, so things like the racks for marine terminals. And then it would require new storage tanks to be built to a higher safety standard. So if a new tank is being built, whether that is from existing capacity or one of the renewable or aviation fuel tanks, they would need to be built to a higher safety standard or risk category 4, which is the highest safety standard for these types of facilities. And then it allows for renewable and aviation fuel expansion with a conditional use review for any new storage tank. So this is response to some community feedback about wanting to have more input on the development at the CEI Hub. So that's the first alternative. The second alternative would limit the expansions with some seismic upgrades. So it includes components of alternative 1 that prohibit new fossil fuel transloading infrastructure. And then renewable and aviation fuel storage expansions would be capped at 5% of existing storage capacity. And then any new expansions would require a facility-wide containment required of those. So you can see the orange, the limited expansion for renewable and aviation fuel, and then the sort of wall, the sort of rectangle around in the graphic, it represents the wall that are for containment required around all of the facilities. And then it would also further require ground improvements required for those new storage tanks. So the ground improvements, are ways of stabilizing the soil in a liquefaction zone. Alternative 3 prohibits the expansion of fossil fuel capacity for all, or fuel storage capacity for all fuel types. So even renewable and aviation fuel would then be prohibited to expand under this alternative. And it would prohibit new transloading infrastructure for all fuel types as well, including the aviation and renewable. So you can see that in our graphic that all of those pieces of the terminals would be prohibited from expanding. It would still allow, as in the baseline, repair and replacement of existing tanks, and have the same limitations there. Alternative 4, like alternative 3, it builds on alternative 3, would prohibit expansion of fuel storage capacity for all fuel types, including the aviation or renewable. It would prohibit new transloading infrastructure for those all fuel types. And then it would require a 70% drawdown of storage capacity by 2035. And so this 70% is based on some federal projections for the Northwest area of the country. So those are based on those projections for future storage capacity needs. So for our preliminary alternatives, we've drafted some revisions to our comprehensive plan policies. So specifically the policies that speak to fossil fuel distribution. So our existing policy reads that we'd limit fossil fuel distribution and storage facilities to those necessary to serve the regional market. The proposed revision of this would be to limit or restrict um, the bulk fuel distribution and storage facilities. We would strike the clause that to those necessary to serve the regional market, as that has causes some problems for us and is in some ways limiting in what we can do. And then the choice of words and limit or restrict is dependent on which of the alternatives is being considered. The draft, we would also draft some CEI Hub policies to support the alternatives. These would be new policies. These would likely be in sort of a sort of section of the comp plan, sort of more specific to the CEI Hub. And these again vary by the alternatives that they're intended to support. So policy one about bulk fuel storage would prohibit expansion of fossil fuel storage capacity and transloading infrastructure and allow limited expansion of renewable and aviation fuel. And so that would support alternatives 1 and 2. And then to support alternatives 3 or 4, we would prohibit those bulk fuel terminals and allow for maintenance and safety upgrades at existing terminals. We have similar policies around seismic upgrades with options to either encourage or require those seismic retrofits. And then we have some more generic ones around environmental protection and encouraging the protection of air and water quality through coordinated planning and regulation. Similarly, for our watershed policies, we would specifically speak to the efforts around the CEI Hub to reinforce the Willamette River watershed specific policies in Chapter 7, and also call on interagency coordination around the CEI Hub, supporting some of the efforts and continuing the efforts that this project has begun. And then having a policy around the energy transition to develop regulations that faster transition to a low carbon economy. The schedule of events, we are currently in October 1st. We have our virtual info session number 2 today. We've held a public open house, and we were at the Rumble on the River on September 25th, and we held a virtual info session earlier in September during work hours. We will be at the Willamette River Keeper webinar tomorrow night. And then we're holding a public open house on October 7th in the St. John's Community Center. And then also at the City Council Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee for an informational briefing on October 9th. Our comments on the public comments on the discussion draft are closing on October 17th. And we are targeting to publish a discussion draft on November 10th. We're targeting also December 16th for a planning commission hearing, which would be also the date where the planning commission would receive testimony, and that would be the deadline for written testimony to the planning commission. This is the link to the project website. We have the QR code and the website link below. And that, I believe, ends the presentation. And I'm going to stop sharing, but I think I can bring it, I'll just bring it up if there are specific questions.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. We do now have time for Q&A, quite a bit of time. And again, as I said in the opening, this time is meant to clarify information and answer questions to inform you and to inform your formal comments on the discussion draft. You can submit your formal comments by accessing the project's map app. There's a link to the project website in the chat. You can follow that link on the project website to the map app. So for the Q&A, please raise your virtual hand if you have a question. I'll call on you in order that your hands are raised, and then I'll ask you to come off mute to ask your question. So to raise your virtual hand, if you're on a computer, on the computer screen, click the reactions button at the bottom and then choose raise hand. You may also just have a raise hand button there. On a phone, tap the three dots, which is the more button, and then select raise hand. If you're on an iPad, tap reactions at the top right, then choose raise hand. So thank you. We'll now open for Q&A. Feel free to raise your hand. I will call on you to come off mute and ask your question. And Ryan, as people start asking questions, feel free to jump in to identify raised hands as well, if you like.
Sure.
Lindsay, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering why the city is considering any alternative that doesn't include seismic upgrades. We know they need them, and it's going to be a hazard if they aren't upgraded.
So the Department of Environmental Quality, the state has a program that is developing a program of seismic upgrades for all of the for the CEI Hub terminals. We are looking at ways to support and allow those upgrades to happen. And so most of all of our alternatives would do that, would support that. Some of them are more explicit in terms of requiring those as things develop. Like if a tank is replaced, the city would require that regardless of where they are at the DEQ process. So we're really looking to coordinate with our state partners on that program and sort of either not get in the way or support them. Joan, do you have any further color on that response? Okay.
Thank you. Lauren, I see your hand next.
Yeah, hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I am curious. At one point, you guys showed some subsections where you were making small recommendations based on your professional opinion and like little tweaks. Are there sections of public documents where we can read a more thorough critical analysis from your team so that we can like the short answer is what would you do? And the long answer is where can we find out what you would do in kind of like a democratic way?
The discussion draft has a sort of much fuller description of the proposals. So that would be, I think, where you'd want to start, and that's accessible from the website, which the link is in the chat, right? And so, yeah, those are the that discussion draft describes all the alternatives. And then I guess in terms of like questions about what we would do, I think the staff is we're putting together the best proposals that we can based on the knowledge that we're gathering and the input that we're receiving, and that all of that will then get fed into the legislative process, so the planning commission and the city council, which will be the final decision maker on this. The democratic process is actually with them, and so our role here is to provide as much information and the best proposals for them to consider.
Great. Okay, I'll raise my hand if I have a follow-up.
Great, thank you. Claire, see your hand next.
Yeah, hello. Well, first of all, I have a couple of questions. One is with the requirement or suggestion of having a seismic upgrade, is there a timeline for that to happen? Or how long are we expected to wait for those upgrades to occur?
Sure. So the the DEQ has a program that I believe is on a 10-year time frame. So some of our timeframes in our alternatives talk about 2035. So that was intended to sort of fit with their program. So they're looking at a 10-year time frame for those upgrades at DEQ. Some of the alternatives include provisions that would require any replacement or work done at the or expansion at the CEI Hub to do seismic upgrades more quickly, or for that facility as those facilities are upgraded or replaced. So the short answer is it's the 10-year time frame that DEQ has, and the longer answer is that we would try to require that as things sort of are developed at the sites.
Yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking since it's been going on for such a long time, the whole issue around liquefaction. I find it a little unfortunate. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Or make a comment? You know, I live outside of Portland city limits, and many of us that drive along Highway 30 live downriver from the CEI Hub. We've sort of been left out of the conversation in many ways. You know, it's like Portland policy, the city of Portland. And so I'm just expressing a need for sort of a broader outreach to the various communities that are going to be affected if there's a tragic calamity in the CEI Hub. That's more like a comment, but
yeah, no, we understood. We hear you.
yeah, you know, I mean, you can work with the government agencies, but you know, how much have you worked to outreach the communities that are being affected?
Sure.
Claire, I thank you for your comment and your question. I want to strongly encourage you, if you're able to take the time to add that to the discussion draft comments online. It's appreciated. Next, I apologize. I think I saw Margaret and Rich, and then after that will be Lauren.
Thanks. It's Margaret. I wanted to ask, you went through the whole thing about community input so far, but you didn't mention the tribes. And I was wondering if you had engaged with the tribes about this process, and if not yet, if you were planning to make sure that happened, because I have heard them talk about the lack of sort of consultation with the city on other issues. Thanks.
Did we lose Ryan?
I'm just realizing I think we lost Ryan.
Okay, well, I can answer that question and hopefully Ryan can jump back on again. Hi, sorry to interrupt that, but I'm Joan Fredrickson. I'm one of the I'm on the team that's working on this project. So thank you for your question, Margaret. Certainly, we have been reaching out to the tribes, the tribal nations, and they have been invited to participate and provide comment, as well as have conversations government to government. And thus far. We started contact with them in May and June, and we've reached out again more recently as this project has advanced. And I know that we have had some initial conversations with the Grand Ronde tribe, but we also are continuing to reach out to the other tribes to see if there are additional governments that are interested in talking to our government about that process, these projects. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lauren. And then, yeah, Lauren.
Great, thanks again. So we talked about in my last question about the democratic process being that all of this feedback is compiled, it ultimately is created into the final draft. It goes to the planning commission and the city council, or just one or the other?
Both. Yeah.
Both. Okay. What is y'all's what are y'all's recommendations about ways that once it's in their hands, we can engage with them to kind of verify that they are looking over the public input, really thoroughly?
So we will release the proposed draft on, we're targeting November 10th. And that
Mhm.
we will open the testimony. So the map app that we have open now will reopen, and there'll be an opportunity then for additional written testimony to come in. And all of that will be shared with the Planning Commission. And then I would, sort of listen to what there's going to be a briefing with them where we will brief them on the proposal, and then there will be hearing. I would listen to the briefing and hear what kind of questions they're asking, because you may hear questions that reflect some of the input
Yeah.
that they're reading, and then come to the public hearing and testify and say, there as well. I would suggest a similar process with the city council. So at some point, once the recommended draft by the planning commission is voted on, we will again open the map app and then collect written testimony, and then the hearings, the planning or the city council will hold hearings. So those are good ways to sort of engage with those bodies.
Okay, great.
Thank you both. I just dropped a link that goes directly to all relevant events for the CEI Hub. That can be found on the main CEI Hub project page that I linked to. But because of this question, I thought it would be helpful to direct you right to that. Would be good to hold on to. Okay, Diane.
Yeah, I have two questions. The first is, given that there are many parts of the comprehensive plan that that relate directly to the CEI hub, why is the city not proposing strengthened language in all of those different parts of the plan? Why is it being limited to a very narrow few?
The intention is to create policies that are specific to the CI hub, and in fact sort of live in a section of the comprehensive plan that are specific to them, so that we can craft policies that have the appropriate language around the desired language. So if we have a policy that is more generic, it may not have the same sort of stringent language that we'd want. So we're using words like limit, prohibit, restrict, in relation to some of these in some of the alternatives. And so we want to make sure that those are specific to the CI hub and not sort of citywide. it may not make sense to do that citywide for everywhere.
Well, I want to ask my second question, but I am concerned because limit was the original language that was problematic the way it's defined in the comprehensive plan. And I don't understand why that's even on the table again, because it's been problematic in the past. We've pointed that out. So anyway, my other question is, originally this project came into being to address how to reduce the natural hazard risks of the CEI Hub. And one of the ones that's still clearly not being really highlighted is the natural hazard risks of the existential climate crisis, which is extremely important, and it should be in there along with the other natural hazard risks that you mentioned earlier. But more than that, I guess I would be concerned. I am concerned because given that renewables have the same safety hazards in terms of flammability, in terms of so many things, and that industry is proposing gutting renewable standards, why are renewables being exempted at all in two of the alternatives?
We were seeking to reflect all of the different inputs that we've heard, and from industry and from labor, we had heard that having flexibility to accommodate the transition to renewables and sustainable aviation fuel was important. And so we were looking to reflect that input in some of our alternatives.
Okay. So mainly because it's important to industry, if I understand correctly.
It is input that we've heard from various people when we've talked to them.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Malik, I see your hand.
Hi, thank you for putting on this event and taking questions. I wanted to ask if any of the language will also apply to fuel stored in the trains that run through the hub, or is it only going to be applied to the storage tanks?
It's only applied to the storage tanks. So the sort of regulation of rail cars is outside the purview of the city. Like, we don't have the ability to do that at the city level.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Do have some, oh, I see a hand, Tracy.
Hi, thanks for hosting today. A lot of us have been surprised by.
Tracy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your volume is very low. Little hard to hear you.
I don't know how to fix it. Is this any better?
I think the volume is the same, but you're sounding better if you just talk directly into the mic. So go for it.
Well, thank you. A lot of us were surprised by insurance companies that will not insure properties in Oregon due to wildfire history. So their risk is going up, and they're not interested in taking that risk. This is all done on a numeric basis. So when we look at the Cascadia history, that's not the only risk at the hub. You've also got local surface faults that are involved, and you also have the possibility of wildfire from Forest Park. So all these risks add up. And I'm not going to ask you how you combine risks into a single number, because I'm not sure anybody knows how to do that. But I will ask, if you're taking responsibility for public safety as in terms of your remit in your bureaucratic responsibilities, do you know who at BPS or any other agency is responsible for computing CEI Hub public safety risk? Given the importance of actually having numbers to deal with when we make decisions. Thank you.
Sure. That's an interesting, I mean, you sort of hit the nail on the head in that we can't very easily come up with one combined risk number, but we do know that there, as you cited, there are overlapping combined risks. There are local risks, as you said, the forest fires in Forest Park. There's flood risk in some areas as well. So those are, I would say, they're not calculated in terms of like a single number, but there are definitely all of the considerations. And as we've sort of done this process, we've heard more and different concerns. And we're also talking to to our partners in the Emergency Management Bureau and fire and elsewhere about how to facilitate responses to emergency management, and if there are other ways for us to support those efforts, whether that's local, local land use regulations usually have a somewhat limited role in those things, but there are ways we can, support them, or at least not get in the way.
This is an excellent qualitative answer. The question was actually who among Portland agencies is capable of quantifying risk?
You may be getting at more of a, I know Multnomah County has done studies and work around the risk assessment and sort of insurance liability for these facilities and that responsibility. So Multnomah County has done more of that work and would probably be, the party best able to sort of address those in a quantitative way. I mean, we've definitely have conversations with them. We've reviewed their work, and they have, they're working on actual legislation that would sort of begin to quantify those that risk and how to best respond to that.
Well, one final exit question.
Sure.
What party could I contact who would best know who that is?
If you email the CEI Hub email address, it's just ceihub@portlandoregon.gov. We can like someone in our office will know who at the county can best address those. I think it's the county, but we can track that down for you and get you some names.
Well, if there's one thing I can do, it's email. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you for that question. I dropped the email address in the chat as well for folks to cut and paste. All right, Malik.
So I've noticed that there are power lines running parallel to the CEI Hub, and I wanted to know if there was any potential for zoning changes that reduces the risk of a power line igniting fuel that leaks out of a tank during or after the earthquake that we're waiting on to happen?
I mean, that is a scenario that is part of this sort of part of the calculation. It's not necessarily specific to the power line question, but it is that is one of the scenarios that is of concern, that there would be a fire risk, from a leak that occurred, for any reason at all. And so the response really from a land use standpoint, the thing that makes these distinct is the fuels that are stored there. That's the thing that is, so that's why we have focused on the capacity and the transloading facilities as ways to, as part of the land use regulations that we can control. So that is part of the sort of thinking that is part of the risk that we're looking at mitigating for. And yeah. I think Lauren, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Based on the assessments that the county has done, or not the county, I'm sorry, the DEQ, and then also BPS, do you think that any level of seismic upgrade, no matter how much we spend and how much we do, is sufficient to protect us, given like the density of that risk and the overlapping factors of it? Maybe not from fire and stuff like that, but specifically from landslides and those type of events.
I think that I guess the reverse would be is that way of looking at it is that any improvements to those seismic stability of these facilities is an improvement over what is there now. Many of the tanks are pretty old and don't have that. So I guess we know that we can't make these all 100% safe in the event of a seismic event, but what we can do is reduce the risk of a catastrophe.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like when we're looking at the four alternatives, the one that feels the safest in terms of environmental disaster. And I mean, obviously, it's obviously desirable to scale down, but you'll especially head that way in your rationale if it's clear that there's no level of refurbishment or just reinforcing things that is ultimately going to make that much of a difference. So I don't know, that's like kind of a tricky one for me.
Thank you for that question. It's a good question.
Thank you. I see Claire, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, well, I have a hard time keeping track of everything these days, but what can you tell us about what's going on with the CEI Hub now? Have there been efforts to deal with emergency practices, or to, are companies, is industry willing to make improvements without having to wait for the policy to be enacted? What can you tell us about what's been going on down there at the CEI Hub? And is there any good news about what's down there? And also, like, who are the emergency teams that are going to be involved in the earthquake if it comes? And are there practices going on? What's the city doing and all of that?
The latter part of that question is probably beyond what anyone here can answer in terms of the emergency management and the fire bureau would be best equipped to answer that question. We've had conversations with them about what their needs are. and how we can best support them. But I will say, for sort of more the latest is that I know DEQ has a program for the seismic upgrades, and I believe that they required all of the facilities to submit sort of seismic risk reports. Those reports are all now online. I believe that they have all of them and are sort of assessing them. And then from those reports, they will then require the facilities to develop seismic mitigation plans. So they'll look at the site and they'll say your report says you have a risk of liquefaction, and here what are you going to do about that risk? And the companies are then going to be submitting sort of the plans for how they're going to address those risks, whether that is moving the facilities or stabilizing them or whatnot. So that's the latest that I know of. Joan, I don't know if you know more. I think you know the same thing I do because we've all read the same reports.
Yeah, I would say, the industry's asking for flexibility, but it would be really nice if they came forward with some positive action to prior to the 2035 deadline of getting things seismically stabilized.
Yep. Diane?
I guess maybe you have some more updated information, but the last I heard on those seismic assessment reports was that some players, like for instance, Zenith Energy, had an F minus, that they had not put forward the kinds of real data that was being asked, and also that what they did report was contradictory to what all of the other groups around them were reporting, even though they're all right in the exact same area on the same seismic or the same liquefaction soils. The other groups were identifying real risks and were taking it seriously and starting to, address things. So when something like that's going on, what are the city's roles in enforcing and pushing forward so that kind of behavior by industry is not happening?
The state has authority on this and is probably more able and has more levers to enforce. And I know that we've met with DEQ. They talked about they did have to send a few letters, I think, to different industry groups. But the last I heard is that they were getting responses from them. So that's what we know. But the city doesn't have a role in the program itself. It's the state's program.
Recording in progress.
We do have some time left for questions. Ryan, can you confirm the date that folks need to leave comment on the discussion draft by, is that October 17th?
October 17th, yes.
Great, thank you. Just want to make sure that was clear. And again, that link is in the chat, or we did have the QR code up earlier.
Yeah.
And this was scheduled till 7. I think, if we want for a little bit longer, but we don't have to go all the way until 7. I do want to give time for folks to think more, and ask questions if they have it.
Well, speaking from the University Park Neighborhood Association's perspective, one of our main concerns is not really addressed in some of this, but it's more of the emergency routes out of the area, both for US 30 and US 30 bypass, but generally the St. John's area is definitely a concern. So that's just a larger concern. It's not specific to what your study has been doing. So, but that's one of our other major concerns.
Thank you.
And I was speaking as the chair of the neighborhood association. So
yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. Tom, I think since we have you, we would love to, I don't know if you were on at the earlier part of the presentation when we said that there would be a open house at the St. John's Community Center. I hope you'll encourage your fellow neighborhood association members and neighbors to attend that. I think it'll be very beneficial for people to have an opportunity to review this information and chat with staff, and certainly just begin to learn more about this project.
right, it's an important project, and we've been pushing it in our stuff. So, yeah. Thank you.
Diane has a hand up.
I would encourage the city to think about, as particularly at that St. John's hearing, to not follow the open house way that was set up downtown for the city, but instead to have some sort of an educational presentation and have a dialogue like this where people can hear each other's concerns and issues and actually engage that way. I feel that it is much more valuable, and a number of people went away from the downtown open house feeling that it was not the best use of time. Probably you guys probably felt that way too, since there were a lot of you there.
Another possibility is to do some more tabling type thing where there's by issue or topic. And that doesn't mean that you didn't have a general presentation up front, but it would allow people to then go to the specific tables or areas where they had specific concerns. And that would also, from an engagement point of view, allows people who are English as second language or introverts or something else to be a little shy to be able to participate in a little more full fashion.
Okay, thank you. It's good feedback.
I mean, it's not unusual. Parks has been doing that with respect to the whole issue of the new aquatic center. So that's been done quite a bit. So
okay.
Well, thank you for all your work. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Claire, you have a hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say Thank you. I really appreciate having the ability to participate in the meetings and learn all about policy and government. I wish there was a better way that we could integrate all the decision making that goes on with the CEI Hub. It's unfortunate that it's so siloed, that it's like, okay, we got the city doing this, but no, we have to talk to the DEQ for that. And I really wish that, there was more of an integrated informational system around all of this.
Yeah.
Complexity of it all is really, it's not for the lighthearted individuals that go, oh, yes or no. It's not a yes or no kind of thing.
That's right. That's right.
That's
I just wanted to add that, I mean, I think we've been sort of inferring it, but I think it's worthwhile saying again that really this is a very big topic, and the work that this project is undertaking is a slice of the regulatory environment for these facilities and all their externalities, right? The barges and the trains and that, so we're just working on a slice of it, the piece that we know that the city has jurisdiction over. But at the same time, we acknowledge that there is a lot of need to elevate this and to continue to have conversations. So as a parallel to this project that we are undertaking, there is also conversation happening that is, bringing together all the different regulatory agencies to try to find ways to advance some of the key priority issues for the, safety at the hub and emergency response and all that type of thing. So those meetings, they started in the summer between state and federal and regional and local jurisdictional partners. And those will go on, through the project. And, perhaps at the end of the project, there'll be a summary of next steps for that group. Certainly it's something that we hope will, elevate some of the things and a lot of the like you were saying, Claire, that, the need for other jurisdictions, right, to be involved, that would be an avenue. Maybe it's, I don't know what county you're in, but maybe it's Multnomah or Clackamas. So I'm not sure what county you're in, but it may be that those folks are at the table presently as a part of this parallel conversation. So I just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, I'm in outer northwest Multnomah County, but the state of Washington should be involved in this conversation as well. They're on the other side of the river, downriver, but it's and then the whole state, obviously, because 90% of the fuels go to the state. Yeah.
Diane has a hand up.
Yeah, just speaking to what Claire just brought up about the siloed nature of all of this, it feels like what would be really important is to have some sort of a team that has the different players that you're talking about, but also has the public involved in a real advisory council. I mean, the RFS standards have for example, feel like that's an industry group that it's like having the foxes guarding the chicken house, and that should not be happening and not be included in this discussion draft without the links being made, despite several conversations I've had with PS folks where they try and downplay the links. These are very real links because the whole exponential growth of dangerous fossil fuels into our community by Zenith and others came about with the 22 explanation that, oh, the city's going forward with this renewable fuels policy. And, it's, we need to have not these siloed efforts, but instead an effort that involves both citizenry and government and other emergency management, et cetera, together working on problem solving on this. And as long as it remains siloed, as long as it's piecemeal, we're not going to get to where we need to be in the time frame that we need to be there. And that includes around the existential climate crisis as well. So I would really, what Claire said is so important.
Thank you. Tracy, you have your hand up?
Yes, I'd like to, first of all, clear my voice and then extend Claire's interest in Washington State. Every hour and every dime we spend on the CEI Hub is a bet that we're going to have fuel resupply from Washington State after a Cascadia event. And in point of fact, the vulnerabilities of the CEI Hub are far exceeded by the vulnerabilities of the refineries in Puget Sound, which are exposed to not only seismic collapse, but also tsunami damage. So I know that we're only Portland and we're only a city, but you start spending time and money on solutions that don't have a chance. It brings up the question, who in Portland is looking at the big picture so that we don't make solid gold storage tanks that don't have a chance of being resupplied after the geologic event that we're all concerned about. So just a riddle for present company. Is anybody in the city responsible for looking at the whole thing? Thank you.
I don't know that anyone is responsible for that level of global thinking, but I will say that the state has contemplated, and I believe there was legislation, but it did not get passed, to look at basically emergency scatter sites for fuel storage in sort of throughout the state, so that there would be in that event of a Cascadia seismic event, there would be fuel storage not just in one place and dependent solely on one source, so that we would have sort of other places that we could access fuel from. So there is some thinking towards that end, but to your point, probably not enough. And it's also something that the city alone cannot do well. I would say that the state, it is appropriate at the state level for them to be thinking about that, because that means that that storage facilities in Hillsborough and Gresham and Beaverton and and Lake Oswego, as well as in Portland.
And I know you're right. They were actually thinking of more of Redmond on the other side of the Cascades.
Yeah.
And by the way, they don't seem to be able to get any funding for the state. So the Ways and Means Committee is not greenlighting anything that we need to be greenlighted. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Ken, thank you. I'm going to take off.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
And thank you very much for all the hard work that you've been working on this.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks very much. And I'll say good night to
Good night,
everybody.
Claire.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Claire
Yeah.
and Tom.
Thank you guys. Rest well.
Bye.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're looking at consensus on the end of our meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate your time, especially on such a beautiful evening. Ryan and Joan, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close this down. Take
All
care.
right. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Mike.
Wing.